Royal Guard's bold move to stop a moving car, finding Charlotte's secret SOS note. To most people passing by, he looked calm and unmovable, like a statue placed there on purpose. This was not his first duty like this. He had done it many times before. Crowds, cars, cameras, and noise were all part of his daily routine. Nothing about the day seemed special when it began. The road in front of him was busy but controlled. Vehicles moved slowly, one after another, following clear instructions. Drivers were used to this place. They knew they had to slow down, show patience, and keep their windows clear. People inside the cars often looked excited or curious. Some waved. Some took pictures. Some simply stared at the guards with admiration. The Royal Guard had learned to notice people without staring at them. His eyes were trained to scan faces, hands, and movements quietly. As the morning went on, the sun rose higher. The guard shifted his weight slightly but kept his focus sharp. His job was not only to stand there, it was to observe. He watched the line of cars carefully. Most passed without any issue. Drivers followed rules. Passengers smiled. Everything looked normal. Then one car slowly approached his position. At first glance, there was nothing unusual about it. It was a standard vehicle, clean and well-maintained. The driver kept both hands on the steering wheel. He looked forward, calm and confident. The car moved at the right speed, not too fast, not too slow. To anyone else, it would have blended in perfectly. But the guard felt something was off. He could not explain it right away. It was not fear. It was not alarm. It was more like a quiet feeling deep inside his chest. Years of training had taught him to trust that feeling. He did not react yet. He simply watched more closely. That was when he noticed the passenger. A young woman sat in the back seat. Her name, he would later learn, was Charlotte. She sat very still, almost too still. Her hands rested in her lap, fingers pressed tightly together. Her shoulders were stiff, and her back was straight in a way that did not look relaxed. She was not looking out the window like most passengers did. She was looking down. The guard's eyes moved carefully. He did not want to make his attention obvious. He noticed that Charlotte's face looked pale. Her lips were pressed together. She did not speak to the driver. She did not smile. There was no phone in her hands, no movement at all. When the car slowed down near the checkpoint, Charlotte briefly lifted her head. Her eyes moved quickly, not with curiosity, but with caution. She looked at the guard for only a second, then looked away again. That single glance stayed with him. The guard had seen nervous people before. Public events made many people uncomfortable, but this felt different. Charlotte did not look nervous because of the place. She looked tense, like someone holding something inside. The driver spoke to another guard nearby, answering routine questions. His voice sounded steady. Nothing he said raised concern. The car was cleared to move forward. But the Royal Guard did not look away. As the vehicle began to roll forward again, Charlotte shifted slightly in her seat. It was a small movement, but the guard noticed it immediately. Her right hand moved toward the window. At first, he thought she was adjusting her position. Then he saw something white near the glass. It was only there for a moment. Charlotte pressed a small folded piece of paper against the window. Her hand trembled. The paper was not fully open, but one word was clear. Large letters, shaky writing, SOS. The guard's breath caught for a fraction of a second. His mind stayed calm, but his heart beat harder. He had been trained for many situations, but moments like this were rare. The car continued moving. Charlotte pulled the paper back quickly, as if afraid she had already done too much. Before the car moved out of reach, Charlotte looked at him again. This time her eyes did not look away. They were wide and filled with fear. Not panic, but a deep, silent fear. It was the kind of look that asked for help without making a sound. The guard did not move. He did not react openly, but inside his thoughts raced. Was the note real? Was she in danger? Had anyone else seen it? He replayed the moment in his head. The shaking hand. The hurried movement. The way she hid the paper so fast. This was not a joke. This was not a mistake. His training told him that signs like these mattered. The car continued forward, slowly blending back into the line of traffic. The driver did not seem to notice what had happened, or maybe he did. The guard could not be sure. For a few seconds, the world felt strangely quiet to him. The noise of engines and voices faded into the background. All he could think about was that small piece of paper and the eyes of the woman behind the glass. He knew the rules. He knew the risks. Acting without clear proof could cause trouble, but ignoring a silent cry for help could be far worse. The guard remained still, but his focus sharpened. He watched the car carefully as it moved ahead. He noted its position, its speed, and the way it stayed close to the flow, as if trying not to stand out. Other guards continued their duties around him. None of them seemed to notice anything unusual. The decision rested on him. Charlotte, inside the car, held the folded paper tightly in her hand. Her heart was pounding. She had not known if the guard would see it. She had not known if she would get another chance. That one moment had taken all her courage. Now she could only wait. The guard took a slow breath. This was no longer a normal day. Something had changed. A routine duty had turned into a test of awareness and courage. He knew that what he chose to do next could change the course of someone's life. As the car moved farther away, the guard's eyes followed it without hesitation. His stance remained strong, but his mind was already preparing for action. He did not know Charlotte's full story yet. He did not know her fears or her past, but he knew one thing with certainty. That note was real, and it could not be ignored. The moment passed, but its weight stayed with him. The road looked the same. The cars kept moving. People kept watching. But beneath the calm surface, a silent story had begun, waiting to unfold. The car did not stop after passing the checkpoint. It moved forward slowly, staying in line with the other vehicles. From the outside, everything still looked normal. People continued talking. Other guards continued their duties. No one shouted. No alarms were raised. But inside the Royal Guard's mind, nothing felt normal anymore. He kept his eyes on the car as long as he could see it. He memorized its color, shape, and position on the road. He noted how close it stayed to the vehicle in front, almost as if the driver did not want to create any space. The guard had learned that people who wanted attention behaved differently from those who wanted to disappear. His hands remained still at his sides, but his thoughts moved quickly. Training had taught him one important rule: panic helps no one. He needed to be sure. Acting too fast without thinking could make the situation worse for the person inside the car. He replayed the moment again and again in his head. The paper, the word, the shaking hand, the eyes filled with fear. It was clear now, that was not a random action. It was a planned move done quietly and carefully. Someone who felt safe would never do that. The guard took a slow breath and turned his head slightly toward a fellow guard standing nearby. He did not speak right away. Instead, he waited for the right moment. Communication had to be careful. He could not let the wrong person hear him. He could not alert the driver too early. When the moment came, he leaned slightly closer and spoke in a low voice. "Did you see the woman in the back seat of that last car?" he asked calmly. The other guard frowned slightly. "No, why?" The Royal Guard kept his voice steady. "Something felt off. I need you to keep an eye on that vehicle." The second guard nodded, trusting his colleague's instincts. No more words were needed. Years of working together had built that trust. Meanwhile, inside the moving car, Charlotte sat frozen. Her heart was still racing. Her hands felt cold even though the day was warm. She kept the folded paper hidden in her palm, pressing it between her fingers as if it was the only solid thing she had left. She did not know if the guard had understood her message. She did not know if he would act. Showing the note had been her only chance. There had been no time to explain, no space to write more, just one word that carried all her fear. She stared straight ahead, careful not to move too much. She could feel the presence of the driver beside her, calm and quiet. He did not speak. The silence inside the car felt heavy, pressing down on her chest. Her mind drifted back to the moment she wrote the note. She had written it earlier that morning with a shaking hand. She had hidden the paper in her sleeve, unsure if she would ever get a chance to use it. Writing that word had taken courage she did not know she still had. It was a promise to herself that if a chance appeared, she would take it. Now that chance had passed, and all she could do was wait. Back outside, the royal guard began to move slowly along the edge of the road, keeping pace with the flow of vehicles. His eyes stayed locked on the car ahead. He watched how it moved, how the driver reacted to small changes in traffic. Nothing looked rushed, nothing looked aggressive, but something still felt wrong. The guard reminded himself to stay patient. He needed the right moment. Stopping a moving car was not a simple action. It required reason, timing, and support. As the car approached a slightly narrower part of the road, traffic slowed naturally. The guard noticed this and felt a quiet sense of relief. A slower pace meant more control. He raised his hand slightly, signaling another guard farther ahead. This time the message was clear: be ready. Charlotte noticed the car slowing more than before. Her breath caught in her throat. She did not dare look around. She did not want to give anything away. But inside, a small spark of hope flickered. Something was happening. She could feel it. The driver glanced briefly at the side mirror. His jaw tightened just a little. It was a small movement, but Charlotte noticed it. Her heart began to beat faster again. She wondered if he had sensed the attention. She wondered if she had made things worse. The car rolled forward a few more feet. Then the royal guard stepped forward into clear view. He stood tall, raising his hand firmly to signal the driver to stop. His posture was confident, his face calm but serious. There was no shouting, no sudden movement, just authority and control. For a brief moment, the car did not stop. Charlotte felt a wave of fear rush through her. Her fingers tightened around the hidden paper. She felt trapped, like the walls were closing in. She did not know what would happen next. Then the driver pressed the brake. The car came to a slow, steady stop. The world seemed to hold its breath. Other guards moved closer, positioning themselves carefully around the vehicle. Their presence was calm but clear. This was no longer routine. Something had changed. The royal guard approached the driver's side, keeping a safe distance. His voice was polite but firm as he asked for the vehicle to remain where it was. The driver responded with questions, his tone controlled but edged with irritation. Charlotte stared straight ahead, her chest rising and falling quickly. She could feel tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not yet. She had to stay strong a little longer. The guard's eyes briefly met hers through the window. This time he did not look away. His expression was steady, reassuring. It was not a promise, but it was close. She knew then that he had seen her note. She knew she was not invisible anymore. As the situation unfolded, the guard remained alert. He listened carefully to every word spoken. He watched every movement. His focus never left the safety of the passenger in the back seat. This was no longer just a feeling. This was real. And whatever story Charlotte was carrying in silence was about to come into the light. The car stood still in the middle of the road, surrounded by calm but watchful guards. There were no raised voices, no sudden movements. Everything was controlled, careful, and quiet. To people watching from a distance, it might have looked like a routine check. But for everyone involved, especially Charlotte, this moment felt heavy and uncertain. The royal guard stayed near the driver's side, his body positioned so he could see both the driver and the back seat at the same time. His posture was firm, but his face remained neutral. He did not want to create fear. He wanted clarity. The driver rolled down his window slightly. His expression was polite but tight, as if he was trying to stay calm while feeling annoyed. "Is there a problem?" the driver asked. The guard answered in a steady voice. "Just a brief check. Please remain where you are." The driver nodded, though his fingers tapped lightly on the steering wheel. It was a small movement, but the guard noticed it. Small details mattered now more than ever. Another guard stepped closer on the opposite side of the car. This was done smoothly, without rushing. Their positions were chosen carefully, not to threaten but to be prepared. Charlotte sat in the back seat, her heart beating so loudly she was sure someone could hear it. Her hands were still clenched together, hiding the folded paper. Every second felt longer than the last. She did not know what would happen next, but she knew there was no turning back. The royal guard glanced toward her again. This time he spoke clearly but gently. "Miss, are you comfortable where you are?" The question was simple, but it carried weight. Charlotte felt her throat tighten. For a moment she could not speak. The driver shifted slightly in his seat. "She's fine," the driver said quickly. "We're just on our way." The guard did not respond right away. He had been trained to notice when someone answered for another person. He waited, giving space. Charlotte finally lifted her head. Her voice was quiet, but it did not shake. I would like to step out of the car," she said. The words hung in the air. The driver turned toward her, surprised. "There's no need for that," he said, forcing a small smile. "We'll be late." The royal guard raised his hand slightly, a clear but calm signal. "Sir," he said to the driver, "please remain seated." There was no anger in his voice, only authority. For a brief moment it seemed like the driver might argue. Then he leaned back, his jaw tight, and nodded once. Charlotte's breath trembled as she reached for the door handle. Another guard stepped closer to her side, opening the door carefully and offering his hand. She hesitated for just a second before accepting it. As soon as her feet touched the ground, she felt a strange mix of fear and relief. The open air felt different, lighter, safer. The royal guard noticed how she stood slightly behind him, as if using his presence as a shield. That told him everything he needed to know. "Let's take a moment over here," he said gently, guiding her a few steps away from the car. The driver watched them closely, his expression unreadable. Charlotte's hands were shaking now. She opened her palm slowly and showed the folded paper. The guard did not reach for it right away. He let her hand it to him when she was ready. When he unfolded it, he saw the word again, SOS. Below it were faint marks, as if she had started to write more but stopped. "You did the right thing," the guard said quietly. Tears filled Charlotte's eyes, but she blinked them back. "I didn't know if anyone would notice," she whispered. "I noticed," he replied, "and I'm here now." Those words broke something inside her. A single tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly, embarrassed. "There's no rush," the guard said. "Take your time." Behind them, other guards were speaking calmly with the driver, asking routine questions, keeping him occupied without raising suspicion. Everything was happening slowly, on purpose. Charlotte took a deep breath. "I couldn't ask for help out loud," she said. "I was scared." "You don't have to explain everything right now," the guard assured her. "What matters is that you're safe." For the first time that day, Charlotte felt a small sense of safety. Not complete, but enough to stand a little straighter. She looked back at the car, then away again. "I thought if I waited longer I wouldn't get another chance," the guard nodded. "Sometimes one moment is all it takes." Traffic around them had been redirected quietly. Most people had no idea what was happening. That was intentional. Privacy mattered. The guard signaled to another officer, who stepped forward and spoke softly to Charlotte, guiding her toward a nearby secure area. She followed, her steps slow but steady. As she walked away from the car, she did not look back. The royal guard remained behind for a moment, watching the driver carefully. There was no sudden movement, no raised voice. The situation was being handled with care, just as it should be. Inside, the guard felt the weight of what had just happened. He knew how close this moment had been to being missed. If he had looked away for even a second, if he had ignored that small sign, the outcome could have been very different. Charlotte was now seated in a quiet space, offered water, given time to breathe. She held the cup with both hands, feeling the warmth seep into her fingers. Her shoulders slowly relaxed. For the first time in a long while she felt heard. Outside, the royal guard returned to his position, his focus still sharp. The day was far from over, but something important had already changed. A bold decision had been made. A silent message had been answered. And a story that had been hidden was finally beginning to unfold. Charlotte sat quietly in the small room, holding the warm cup with both hands. The room was simple and calm. There were no bright lights, no loud sounds, and no people rushing in and out. Everything about the space was meant to help someone feel safe. Still, her hands shook slightly as she tried to steady her breathing. A kind-faced officer sat across from her, keeping a respectful distance. The royal guard stood nearby, not too close, not too far. He wanted her to know she was not alone, but also not pressured. He understood that trust could not be forced. It had to grow slowly. "Take your time," the officer said gently. "There's no hurry," Charlotte nodded. She stared into the cup for a moment, watching the light steam rise and disappear. Her mind was full of thoughts, memories, and fears that had been building for a long time. Speaking felt hard, like trying to open a door that had been locked for weeks. After a few quiet moments, she took a deep breath. "I didn't know how else to ask for help," she said softly. "I was scared someone would hear me." The officer listened without interrupting. The royal guard watched carefully, noticing how Charlotte's shoulders tightened as she spoke. "You're safe here," the guard said calmly. "Nothing you say will get you in trouble." Those words seemed to ease her just a little. Charlotte began slowly, choosing her words with care. She explained that for some time she had felt watched and controlled. She had not been allowed to make simple choices on her own. She could not speak freely or move freely. Each day felt like walking on thin ice, never knowing when it might crack. "I kept telling myself it would get better," she said, "that I just needed to be patient." Her voice wavered, but she continued. "But it didn't," she added. "It only got heavier." She explained how writing the note had been her last hope. She had written it early in the morning, hiding it carefully. She had practiced in her mind how she might show it without drawing attention. Even then, she had not been sure she would find the courage. "When I saw the guard outside," she said, glancing briefly at him, "something inside me said, 'This is it.'" The royal guard felt a quiet ache in his chest as he listened. He had seen many things in his years of service, but hearing the fear in her voice made it real in a way no training ever could. "You did something very brave," he said. Charlotte shook her head slightly. "I didn't feel brave," she replied. "I felt desperate." "Sometimes," the officer said gently, "they look the same." Charlotte gave a small, tired smile at that. Outside the room, the situation with the driver was being handled carefully. Questions were asked. Information was checked. Everything was done by the book. No accusations were made without reason. Calm and patience guided every step. Inside, Charlotte continued to speak. She shared how she had felt isolated, how she had been made to doubt herself. Little by little, her story came together. Each sentence seemed to lift a small weight from her chest. The royal guard noticed that as she spoke, her hands stopped shaking. Her voice grew steadier. It was as if saying the words out loud was giving her back a part of herself. "You don't have to remember everything today," the officer reminded her. "We can go step by step." Charlotte nodded. "I just don't want to be ignored anymore." "You won't be," the guard said firmly. That promise mattered more than she expected. After some time, Charlotte was given a chance to rest. She leaned back in her chair, closing her eyes for a moment. The room felt quiet in a comforting way now. Safe. The royal guard stepped outside briefly, taking a slow breath. The air felt different to him too. He thought about how close this had been to going unnoticed. A single moment, a single word on a piece of paper. He reminded himself why he wore the uniform, not just for duty but for moments like this. When he returned, Charlotte looked up at him. "Thank you," she said quietly. He shook his head. "You did the hardest part," he replied. You asked for help, she nodded, absorbing that. As the day moved forward, plans were made to ensure Charlotte's safety. Support was arranged. She was not left alone at any point. Each step was explained to her before it happened. Control, which she had lost for so long, was slowly being returned to her. She noticed the difference. No one spoke over her. No one rushed her. Every choice was hers. That alone felt like a relief. Later, as she prepared to leave the secure area, she paused near the door. She looked back at the royal guard one last time. "I almost didn't show the note," she admitted. "I was afraid." He met her gaze. "Courage isn't about not being afraid," he said. "It's about acting anyway." She took a deep breath and nodded. "I'll remember that." As Charlotte walked away, supported and protected, the royal guard watched until she was out of sight. He felt tired, but it was a good kind of tired. The kind that came from doing the right thing. The road outside looked just as it had that morning. Cars moved. People walked. Life went on. But one hidden story had been brought into the light. And that made all the difference. The day was slowly coming to an end, but the events that had unfolded earlier still lingered in everyone's mind. Charlotte had been escorted to a safe location, one where she could rest, speak freely, and begin to feel secure again. She was surrounded by people who had her best interests in mind. For the first time in what felt like forever, she did not have to watch every move she made or think twice about what she said. She could simply be herself. Even though she was physically safe, the emotional weight she carried was still heavy. She sat quietly on a simple chair, her hands folded on her lap. She looked out of the window at the sunlight fading behind the tall buildings. Her thoughts wandered, thinking about the journey that had brought her to this moment. She thought about the fear she had felt, the small piece of paper she had pressed against the car window, and the man in uniform who had noticed her silent call for help. The royal guard stood outside the room for a moment, letting her gather her thoughts. He had returned to his post earlier in the day, but had kept an eye on the situation from a distance. Watching Charlotte safely guided to the secure area had given him a quiet sense of satisfaction, but it also reminded him of the delicate line between danger and safety. Every small detail mattered, every second counted, and every choice could change the course of someone's life. Later, the officer who had been speaking with Charlotte returned with a small notebook. It was meant for her to write down anything she wanted to say or any thoughts she needed to release. She took it with trembling hands. The simple act of holding a pen and paper in a safe place felt liberating. She began to write slowly, one word at a time, letting her thoughts flow onto the paper. Each line she wrote seemed to lift a tiny burden from her chest. Outside, the driver of the car had been questioned calmly and carefully. There was no yelling, no threats, no unnecessary pressure. The investigation was conducted professionally, ensuring that the truth would come out without creating panic. It was clear that Charlotte's message had been genuine, and no one doubted the urgency of her silent call for help. The driver's presence had no effect on Charlotte now. She felt protected and supported by the trained individuals surrounding her. Charlotte's hands finally stopped shaking, and a quiet confidence began to form within her. She realized that the courage she had felt that morning, the courage to write the note and show it in secret, had not left her. In fact, it had grown stronger. It had been noticed, acknowledged, and acted upon. For the first time, she felt that her actions mattered, that her voice, even when quiet and hidden, could bring about change. The royal guard returned to the secure area to check on her. He noticed her writing and gave a small nod of approval. "You're doing well," he said quietly, careful not to startle her. Charlotte looked up, her eyes reflecting a mixture of relief and gratitude. "I never thought anyone would notice," she admitted. "You made sure they would," the guard replied. "Sometimes it only takes one small action to be seen. You took that action." She smiled faintly, feeling a warmth that had been absent for so long. It was more than relief, it was hope. Hope that her life could be different. hope that she could reclaim the sense of control she had lost. As the day turned into evening, Charlotte was guided through a series of small steps to ensure her safety. She was allowed to speak with a counselor, someone trained to help people process experiences like hers. She could ask questions, express fears, and start to understand what had happened without fear of judgment. Every decision was explained to her before it was made, giving her the power to choose how she wanted to proceed. That simple respect for her autonomy meant more than words could describe. Meanwhile, the royal guard returned to his post, standing tall as always. But inside, he was different now. He knew he had done his duty, yes, but he also knew he had changed someone's life forever. One moment of observation, one decision to act, and a silent plea for help had been answered. It reminded him why he wore the uniform, why he trained so diligently, and why he remained alert even in the most ordinary moments. Charlotte, sitting safely in the secure area, began to relax. The initial fear was still there in the background, but it was no longer overwhelming. She felt a sense of empowerment, a quiet strength she had almost forgotten existed. She realized that courage was not about being fearless. It was about taking action even when fear was present. The morning's events had shown her that, and now she carried that lesson with her. She also thought about the royal guard who had noticed her note. She didn't know his name, and she might never know the details of his life, but she understood the importance of his presence. He had been trained to observe, to notice small details, and to act when necessary. But beyond training, he had shown empathy, awareness, and courage. That combination had made all the difference. In the days that followed, Charlotte's life began to regain a sense of normalcy. She was not rushing, not forced, not trapped. She could make choices for herself, and she could start to rebuild the trust that had been broken. She continued to write in her notebook, slowly but steadily, letting her thoughts, fears, and hopes take shape on the pages. Every word she wrote was a reminder of her courage and of the people who had helped her along the way. The royal guard returned to his routine duties, but he could not forget the day's events. He had stood quietly, observed carefully, and acted decisively. He knew that the world often overlooked the quiet signals, the hidden messages, and the small gestures of desperation. That day had reminded him that noticing, understanding, and acting could change a life. Charlotte's story became a quiet reminder for everyone involved. It was not about fame or recognition. It was about awareness, empathy, and the courage to act. It was about listening, even when the message was small and silent, and responding, even when the action was risky. By the evening, Charlotte felt something she had not felt in a long time: safety. She looked out the window at the darkening sky, feeling the quiet peace of knowing that her life had been protected and that she was no longer alone. Every step she had taken, every small decision had led her to this moment. The royal guard, standing tall in his uniform, reflected on the day. He had noticed, he had acted, and he had helped. He had reminded himself why vigilance, awareness, and courage mattered. Even in routine duty, even in ordinary moments, extraordinary things could happen. The story ended not with drama or chaos, but with quiet strength, relief, and hope. Charlotte had been seen. She had been heard. She had been helped. And a life had been changed because someone had been willing to notice, willing to act, and willing to protect. That day remained in both of their memories, not as a tale of fear or danger, but as a reminder that courage and attention to small details can make the biggest difference in the world.